Well, hi everybody, meteorologist Joe Cioffi. Welcome to the Joe Cioffi Weather Show. It is a Tuesday night, the 17th of December, 2019. We've got one storm that is getting ready to depart the Northeast. We've got a new storm that's coming into the Northwest, and we've got a few other things going on in various parts of the country. But the vast majority of the U.S. actually right now, believe it or not, is pretty quiet. Uh, I'm tired. I'm really burned out from dealing with these. You work, actually, you wind up working harder in these smaller storms than you do in the bigger ones. And I think that's because you have to anticipate um, what could possibly go wrong. If you've got a big one coming and you know you've got a big one coming, and the variables are few, you can focus just on those. But in a situation like this, where you had to deal with the chance for freezing rain and sleet and ice, and then a refreeze afterward, and then would there be snow on the front end or would there not be snow on the front end? So it has taken quite a bit out of me. So hopefully, I've been trying to resolve this audio issue of mine. It keeps coming back. So I'm hoping I sound okay. I still sound nasally from the darn head cold that I am trying to get over. Today's the sixth day, and usually they run their course in about 10 days, but it's just driving me crazy. So, with that in mind, let's take a look at the U.S. Watches and Warnings map. One other thing I just want to mention, is just sort of kind of a side note, is that one of the upsides with regards to snow events is that when they wind down, I usually go through a couple of weeks worth of Facebook posts that I didn't get to make responses to some folks, and it's a good way for me to hunt down and get rid of trolls. And this time there was only one troll. You only see them come up in a situation like this, and then they just say stupid stuff. So I got that satisfaction at least out of it. So looking at the watches and warnings map tonight, it's, as I said, it's pretty quiet. You do have some lake effect issues that we're going to be dealing in north central New York and also on the southwestern part of New York State. So we'll get to those in a second. We still have some residual winter weather advisories up in parts of New England and in Connecticut and a small portion of the Hudson Valley. We have also some lake effect issues in and around the Great Lakes. And we've got winter storm watches, winter storm warnings, and winter weather advisories up for the West, the Northwest in particular, where the next weather system is going to be coming in. And it's a lake effect snow warning that is up for Watertown down to, well, not including Syracuse. They're in a winter weather advisory, but it's the areas up near Watertown, Tug Hill, Pulaski, that is going to wind up with some fairly decent snows out of this. And also in southwestern New York, down south and west of Buffalo toward Jamestown, and points south and west of there, extending some advisories up into Erie. You've got the lake effect snow warning there, and we have winter weather advisories up for the one northwestern county, actually two northwestern counties of Ohio and northwestern PA. So that pretty much sums it up as far as the warnings go. The one thing that's going on in the area from eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England is that the inland sections never did get above 32 today, and there was still more rain and more ice accretion. Right near the coast, for example, where I am on Long Island, it's been sitting pretty much in the low and mid 30s all day long. A few places have gotten down to about the 32-degree mark. We've seen the winds shift around in the northwest. Now we're waiting for skies to clear and those winds to pick up a little bit. But there will be some areas that will see a bit of a refreeze. Just a reminder, if you're traveling around this evening or through the first part of tonight or during the overnight into tomorrow morning, especially inland, it's just going to be very, very slippery. So just bear that in mind. It's not going to get overly cold tonight, but we do have a much colder shot of air coming in for tomorrow night and for Thursday and to finish off the week. So here's what it looks like on the U.S. satellite view tonight. Excuse me. I'm going to need a day off soon. Just a heads up. But the clouds and moisture streaming out of the Gulf of Mexico, moving northeastward in the southwest flow. You're getting this upper trough that is beginning to swing around. The southern part of this is lifting up to the northeast. But if you look around the Great Lakes, you can see the next upper trough in the northern stream that's driving southeastward. That has the chance for snow showers and snow squalls, even up to my area for later tomorrow. And behind it, a shot of very cold air that comes in for Wednesday night and Thursday. Thursday morning, we're going to be waking up with temperatures in the teens and single digits. It's pretty quiet in between, and then you've got the storm that is coming in the west, and you see the clouds and the moisture streaming in specifically to the northwest. And on the radars right now, we're still seeing some leftover precipitation, be it snow when you get up into New Hampshire and parts of Maine. Still seeing some rain and maybe some freezing rain here in southeastern Massachusetts, and a little bit still going on back on Long Island and in coastal New Jersey. But after that, we're pretty much done, and weather conditions are going to start getting better. In the Great Lakes, seeing a little bit of action there with some lake effect snow going on. And we've got some rough weather tonight in Florida, where the Storm Prediction Center has a marginal risk for severe weather, and you can see a little line of thunderstorms there that has developed from just off the Georgia South Carolina coast by a fair distance, and then coming inland in along the North Florida coast to just north of Orlando, back to about Tampa, and then extending out into the Gulf of Mexico, and that whole area is pulling away toward the east. In the west, we've got not too much happening down in California and in the southwest. In the northwest, beginning to see coming into range the precipitation, and a little bit has come on land as well, but beginning to see some precipitation in response to the storm system that is off the west coast. And here's our surface map tonight. Low pressure southeast of Long Island. It is now pretty much the primary low, as we had a primary die out in West Virginia, redeveloped along the Delaware coast, and now that's moving on to the northeast. The real push, though, is with this next cold front that is back over, now moving into over Lake Michigan through central Wisconsin, because the air behind that front is very cold. We've got temperatures in the single and double digits below zero once you get on the other side of the Minnesota-Canada border. High pressure dropping down into northwestern Minnesota, northeastern North Dakota, and that's going to be our cold air moving into the east. And meanwhile, as we said, we've got storminess out in the west with low pressure sitting there off the coast of Northern California and making its way northeastward, and that will be coming into the northwest with the warnings and watches that we showed you just a little while ago. So we're kind of focused here on the fact that our weather is not going to be overly active for going forward, which is a good thing because we need a bit of a break. And looking at the upper air for today, which is what it's supposed to look like right now, and that is, you see the southern stream energy that is hanging back right down here, and then you've got your upper low that is dropping down, and that's going to be swinging around toward New England with cold air. In the west, there's your system off the North Carolina coast, and of course you've got energy that is driving into southwest Canada, and all of this gets complicated by the fact that you've got a system out north of the Azores. You've got an upper high sitting over Greenland, so you do have a bit of a negative North Atlantic oscillation here going on that we've been talking about, that was going to be coming back. And that is something I think we're going to keep a watch on. It may wind up hanging around for a while, and it could ultimately play a role in where the weather goes in the longer term. Now, I will say this: as soon as I think I'm going to let go of a sneeze here, hang on. God, do I want this cold to go away? So, um, so you take a look at the upper air going forward. And of course, this upper low swings into the east. We get that cold air that comes in for Wednesday night and for Thursday. And then after that, we're going to see the pattern relax a little bit. You'll notice the flow kind of goes westerly across the U.S. We lose this Canadian connection of cold air for a little while, or at least to take us through the weekend. And there is a system that is the system that's off of California. Actually, let me just back this up. So you've got your system off the California coast. Part of that is going to the energy that's to the north goes into the northwest, but the energy to the south drops down into Arizona, as we've seen so many of these systems do in the last 6 to 8 weeks. Well, this time around, because the northern part of the jet stream and the southern part of the jet stream are both in two different places, two different worlds, you're not going to have any kind of a phase. And while this southern stream energy here is actually rather impressive, it's going to be confined to the south. It's got no place to go but pretty much straight east. And the reason for that is that we don't have a shortwave in that northern stream that's going to time out and phase with this and lift it up the coast. Instead, this part of the jet goes on its own, own merry way, and this part of the jet goes on its own merry way. So the two good things out of this: no storm system here that's going to impact the Northeast. This will bring some rather substantial rains to Florida and Georgia, and maybe even into coastal South Carolina, and also parts of Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana while it's in its formative stages. But it won't be turning up the East Coast. So I think that's good because I don't want to have to deal with a weather system on the weekend right before Christmas. And also the fact that we do see moderation in temperatures here because, again, that Canadian connection is lost for temporarily anyway. And then as we go through Christmas week, what you start to see, at least in my view, is you begin to see the upper air gradually transitioning and a kind of a pattern reset going on. So I think that's what we might wind up seeing during the last 10 days or so of the month of December. But eventually we could wind up with some sort of deep trough in the east. And also the model seems to want to go to a kind of a blocky, continue to go to this sort of blocky look here and this rather vigorous split flow if it winds up holding. So if this is correct, we get the Canadian connection starting to come back very late in December or perhaps for the beginning of January if this verifies. And you've got this high that's building up uh, toward Greenland and up into the polar regions. Folks that follow the stratospheric warming continue to talk about the fact that there's the polar vortex in the stratosphere is getting continually attacked in the last several weeks, and this might eventually, play down to this sort of negative North Atlantic oscillation type pattern with higher pressures up near the polar regions, and we've seen also, except for these breaks that you get from time to time, you see the pattern keep coming back to this sort of split flow. If this 500, it's never going to verify exactly like this. But if we have something like this in terms of a look going into late December or January, if you're a snow lover, I would be pretty excited about it because that's something where you can, really sink your teeth into as far as a storm system in the longer term. But as you know, and as I know, a number of pieces have to come together for this sort of stuff to happen. But it is at least some food for thought going forward. So just the other thing I would point out is I would not get too worked up over the fact that the GFS on the last few runs, and I haven't even looked at this new one yet. I'm looking at it with you for the first time, but I would not. I rather the models not show a fantasy a snowstorm, because when they show fantasy snowstorms, they never happen. It's when they don't show them on the surface map, but you've got a 500 that has potential. That to me is much more important. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. We'll just run it back here. You can see this cold front and upper low that runs into New England, brings a pretty decent shot of cold air into New England down to the northern mid-Atlantic states. That northerly flow, by the way, goes way down along the Carolinas and into Florida. You start to set up that southern energy coming across. You can see that low pressure forms in the northeast Gulf of Mexico and brings some heavy rains to Florida Saturday into Sunday, and then the low winds up moving into northern Florida and off the southeast coast. And again, you don't have that system that something coming down from the north to kind of phase with it and lift it up along the east coast, so it gets pushed out to the east. Looks like it's going to be fairly quiet then, if that's the case, starting from Thursday and lasting through Christmas Day. It's not until the end of next week that we have some kind of system going to the Great Lakes. Again, I wonder if we may wind up with a surprise in here somewhere. It's hard to imagine you're going to go 16 days without seeing anything happen. And on this particular run, we see the model displaying a rather vigorous storm going to the Great Lakes. It probably won't. I can guarantee you it will not be there on the next run. But the bottom line is, to me, the upper air is pretty dynamic. It actually gives you two pretty solid cold shots here. One for going into the last couple of days of December and into January, and then another strong cold front with some very cold air right behind it. So there's gonna be more. There are gonna be opportunities. Nothing that we've seen in the first 17 days of December should be at all for snow lovers. It should not be at all discouraging. I'm taking a very pro snow lovers stance here because um, folks seem to get disappointed in a big way when you forecast very little snow. Somehow the forecast is translated into um, a 1 foot snowstorm, and if you get the inch that you forecast, they just lose their minds. So I'm trying to kind of settle the 5-year-olds out there. Izzy D, I don't buy into the stratospheric warming thing being good. Uh, per, uh, for in the East necessarily. We all know the hype from last winter. Well, look, that's quite true. The split that occurred in the vortex last winter did not uh, reach down into the lower part of the atmosphere and rearrange the chess pieces. It didn't do it at all. And I agree with you. Uh, I I really I'm actually haven't been really paying a whole lot of attention to all of that because I just don't want to get caught up in it. I'd rather just let the weather pattern do what it's going to do and not look for any type of, um, you know, what's the phrase I'm going for here? I don't want to hang my hat on something that I don't actually quite understand. And we saw last year where it didn't couple. The what happened up in the stratosphere did not couple with what was going on in the lower atmosphere. And you know what? It may not couple again. On the other hand, you may not get these splits in the polar vortex in the stratosphere, and it may not matter. So I don't. Um, Again, I don't know enough about that part of the long range and how it works. I only have a very cursory view knowledge of it. Um, so we'll let that play out. If it plays out, fine. If it doesn't, I'd rather just follow the cards that are dealt me right here. So I'm coming back to the board. You can tell right tonight I'm like staggering here because I'm really tired. So let's come to the chat board. And the head cold is getting, has gotten to me in a big way. And by the way, I appreciate those of you who are here every single night. Thank you so much. There was something I wanted to tell everybody also, just to remind everybody about something, and now I've completely lost it. My friend gave me a pad and pencil, pen, and calculator and a pad here so that I can write down, um, things that come to mind. Like, this way I don't forget them, except I forgot to write them down. So it didn't help. Let's see. They are Mark Gladfelter. That's the other thing with the Madden Julian oscillation and all the rest of it. It's like, just stop already. Okay, everybody just stop with all of that. We can go crazy forever only because it hasn't snowed in the I-95 corridor. It has in Boston, but New York City, a couple two small snowfalls, and Washington hasn't seen anything. And out of that, because we haven't seen a complete wipeout yet, the odds of which happening in the first half of December are pretty low. Um, and they're all going off the deep end about winter being over. It's still out there today. God, what can I tell you? I see Mrs. Rayo said that Joe Rayo is zonked out on the cap. So Joe is feeling the exhausted. Oh God, you know what? I should have not done this show tonight. I'm having trouble just speaking basic English. I don't want anybody to think that I've been drinking before the show. I haven't been. It's some Nyquil and a cigar. Yeah, they'll both clear out my sinuses. I guarantee you, Timothy Veltman. You are correct. I'm gonna thank you very much for hitting super chat tonight. Really do appreciate it greatly. And just wanted to see. Yes, I have a vaporizer and liquid Vicks. I have the old-fashioned Vicks Vapor Rub, Christina Pedia. That I will use tonight. Oddly enough, I'm fine in my chest and my throat's not sore. It's just right in here, in my sinuses. I feel like they're still draining, but I think it's also the fact that doing all this work and talking and everything else, and you get tired, and I don't necessarily sleep well during situations like this. Izzy, you want a white Hanukkah? It usually doesn't happen, so I wouldn't see why this year would be much different. However, it does come out slightly later in the calendar. Is it not on the 20th? If I remember correctly. Well, if we're going to go into a quiet stretch here through the weekend and into next weekend through Christmas. So unless there's a big surprise somewhere along the line, um, we're not going to have a white Christmas. At least my area is not going to have a white Christmas and a white Hanukkah. So we'll have to shoot maybe for New Year's to see what that brings. And honestly, when you look back at the records, because the Scott Briller was looking at stats and he passed them along to me, so I'm trying to do them out of memory because I didn't write them down. But if you look back at the number of times it's actually snowed on Christmas Day in New York City, it's rare. It doesn't really happen very often. It snows on the days around it. I've always defined for me a white Christmas is that there's actually got to be snow on the ground. Whether it happens on Christmas Day to me doesn't matter. If it's on the ground, if it snows the few days before, and it's on the ground for Christmas Day, to me that counts as a white Christmas. And this year, you're not going to wind up you're not going to get that. So at least that's the way it looks. But again, the overall pattern to me, I think, is doing some sort of reset here. And when we get into the end of the last days of December and going in January, I think we're going to see action rev up. So don't give up hope, snow lovers. It's a long way till the end of winter. Okay, Lord have mercy. So the one troll I got rid of today was somebody that I hadn't seen uh, uh, in a long time, but he comes up every once in a while, and all he'll put on there is another forecast blown. And the thing is, um, I'm not exactly sure, what part. I mean, there were problems with the forecast, no question. But again, when we're talking about in terms of the snow part of it, just didn't work out. I think the freezing rain and ice certainly did. And that was going to be front and center, the main issue. Whether there was snow on the front end or not would have been a bonus. So, but the thing is, you get these people that just the only time you ever see them is they come on and they come on to say stupid stuff. So I just, the new rule I instituted a long time ago is I go hunting for them afterward, and then when I see these people, I just block and ban them. This is on Facebook, block and ban, block and ban, and I've gotten to a point. Not that I ever got a lot of them, but I've gotten to a point now where I only get maybe one or two in any given snow event. And on this particular one, I only had the one. I had to block somebody that I had previously banned off my page, but not off my personal page, with somebody that I was friends with. And I waited till his birthday and then I blocked him. I recommend that if you have to unfriend and block somebody, the best thing to do is to do it on their birthdays. Okay, and somehow let them know about it. That's the thing. Um, well, John Marinelli, I've had my fair share of forecasts that have not panned out. It happens, okay. And the thing is, when it does happen, I always fess up to it. So, but people just in general, there are some people that uh, I don't know. They just seem to think they're being really clever by going on weather pages. People, that's not just it's not just me. They go on a bunch of them, and they just say stupid stuff. I listen. If it's a blown forecast, it's a blown forecast, and I have always been honest and upfront about what I've said, and if it comes back that the forecast didn't work out, I admit it. There are some people who don't follow that idea. They just kind of ignore whatever they said the day before, and as if it never happened. And I've always felt that that's not a. I don't know that that's a good thing to do. We're talking about people that worked in the TV world, and the reason for that is because people do remember what you say, and I've always attempted to be very honest and upfront about about what I'm producing, what I'm forecasting, and if it doesn't work, I like to at least understand what went wrong, so that this way, when it shows up again, I won't make the same mistake twice. So perhaps taking that approach has helped me over the years. Um, but it still happens every once in a while, and hopefully not this winter. Okay, don't want it to happen, but it's kind of hard with all this stuff, especially when you get a storm like what we had yesterday. We had so many different angles, and then start times, end times, and transition times for precip. It's just very hard to keep up with it after a while, but you try. Now, I'm going to say goodnight because I'm losing it. And it's obvious that I'm tired. So I appreciate everybody's patience with me tonight. And maybe tomorrow, if there's not too much going on, I will perhaps take the night off. Okay. And then we'll come back on Thursday. I'll come back with a fresh head. If there's no, we're not talking about any big approaching storms. We'll take a day, take a breather, and we will also, I'm not going to worry too much about snow squalls tomorrow afternoon, and I'm not going to worry about the fact that Wednesday night and Thursday morning we're going to wake up with numbers in the teens and single digits, and maybe down to near zero up in northern New England with cold wind chills. Time to take a breather. All right, so everybody have a great night. Thanks for being here. I'll do my regular weather post tomorrow. I will do a weather in 5 in the morning, but we'll wait till Thursday to do the next live stream. All right. Good night, everybody, and travel safely, especially if you're in the ice covered areas from eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England.